Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at some excerpts from a document called The Practice of Non-Reactivity.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, and it's in Chinese originally, so that adds a little extra fun to it. But we're going to explore this whole concept of non-reactivity and think about how it might apply to your life as a listener.
Yeah, it's a concept that I think resonates across a lot of different cultures. This idea of not being ruled by your emotions, finding a sense of inner stillness, even when everything around you might be in chaos.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people are looking for something like that.
Absolutely, and it's easier said than done, though, right?
Yeah.
So what does it actually look like to be non-reactive? Is
Right.
it like, are you suppressing your emotions or?
Not necessarily, no. It's not really about suppressing. It's more about changing how you relate to those thoughts and feelings.
Okay.
So instead of being swept away by every wave of emotion that you experience, imagine just kind of being able to observe it, acknowledge it, and not necessarily let it dictate your actions.
Okay, so you're more of an observer than rather than getting caught up in all the drama of each thought or feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. And this Chinese text we're looking at uses a really great metaphor for this, the metaphor of a river.
Oh, I love metaphors. Tell me more.
All right. So imagine your thoughts and emotions as the flowing water of the river, right? Sometimes it's calm and serene, other times it's wild and turbulent. But beneath the surface, there's the riverbed.
Okay.
And the riverbed stays the same, it's unchanging. And that represents your true self.
So even if like my mind feels like a raging torrent of anxiety or frustration, there's this deeper, steadier part of me that's not affected by that.
Yeah, exactly. And the more we cultivate non-reactivity, the more we can sort of tap into that grounded, unchanging sense of self. And we start to realize that, you're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts, you're something more than that.
That's a really powerful image. I like that. And it makes me wonder, how does that awareness actually help us in our daily life? Like if I know that about myself, how does it change how I react to, say, a stressful situation at work or something?
Yeah, that's where we get into the techniques for actually cultivating non-reactivity. And this text actually outlines some specific approaches that I think we'll get to a little bit later.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I definitely want to learn more about that.
Uh,
But before we dive into the techniques, I'm curious, does being non-reactive mean that you become like indifferent or detached from the world?
mhm.
Like, are you just emotionally flatlining?
That's a really common misunderstanding, actually.
Yeah,
A
okay.
non-reactivity isn't about like shutting down your emotions or disengaging from life. It's actually about creating space for a more authentic and meaningful experience of life.
So you're almost more present and engaged because you're not so caught up in your own internal whirlwind.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about experiencing that full spectrum of human emotion, but with a greater sense of awareness and choice.
Right.
So instead of just being ruled by your reactions, you learn to respond in ways that are more in line with your values.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's not about suppressing emotions. It's about transforming your relationship to your emotions.
Exactly. It's a practice, it's an ongoing process of learning to navigate the river of our inner lives with more skill and grace.
I love that. So it's about how you relate to those emotions.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm excited to learn more about how to put that into practice. But first, let's take a moment and just soak in this powerful image of the river and the riverbed.
Yeah.
So for you listening, try to visualize that, the flowing water of thoughts and emotions, and then beneath it all that solid, unchanging ground of your true self. We'll be right back to explore the practical side of non-reactivity right after this. Welcome back to our deep dive into non-reactivity. Before the break, we were talking about that powerful image of the river in the riverbed, right?
Mm.
Our thoughts and feelings, like the water always moving and changing, and then our true self is kind of like that steady riverbed underneath.
Yeah, exactly.
But how do we actually access that place of steadiness? Like,
Mhm.
especially when life is throwing you curveballs?
Mm. Right. Well, that's where the practical techniques from this text really come in.
Right.
And one technique it emphasizes is this practice of labeling your thoughts and emotions as they come up.
Labeling.
Yeah.
So, like, if I'm feeling super overwhelmed with a project at work, I would just say to myself, okay, this is stress.
Exactly. Yeah. But the key is to do it without judgment.
Yeah. Right.
You're not like beating yourself up for feeling stressed. You
Yeah.
just simply acknowledge stress or anxiety or whatever it is. It's
Uh-huh.
like creating a little bit of space between you and that feeling.
Interesting. So instead of getting totally wrapped up in like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed, I'm acknowledging it, but I'm not letting it define me.
Exactly. Yeah, by labeling it, you're taking a step back, you're becoming the observer rather than getting all tangled.
Okay.
And that can be really powerful, actually. Just the simple act of naming it can really help to kind of diffuse the intensity of it.
I could see how that would be helpful, but what about like when you're really in it?
Yeah.
When the emotions are so strong that it feels like they're just taking over.
Right.
Like, how does labeling help then?
It might seem kind of counterintuitive, but actually, even with those really strong emotions, like the principle is still the same.
No?
So let's say you're feeling really angry, right? Instead of suppressing that anger or, lashing out at somebody, you just notice it. You say, anger arising.
So even in the heat of the moment, that can help create some distance.
Yeah. It's about recognizing that you're not the anger, but, there's anger present in your experience.
Right.
And that subtle shift in perspective can make a huge difference.
Okay, so we're not trying to eliminate emotions altogether,
Hmm.
but we're trying to change how we relate to them.
Exactly. And, this text doesn't say that you should become emotionless.
Right.
It's more about developing a wiser, more skillful relationship with our inner world.
Okay, I'm really starting to get this making a lot of sense.
Good.
Are there other techniques mentioned in the text that can
Yeah.
help us cultivate this non-reactivity?
Yeah. Another crucial one is mindfulness.
Mindfulness. Okay.
Now, I know you've probably heard that word a lot.
Yeah, it's everywhere these days.
It's kind of a buzzword, but it's often misunderstood.
Well,
It's not just about, relaxing or clearing your mind.
right.
It's about cultivating a very specific kind of attention.
Okay. What kind of attention? How is it different from like the way I'm normally paying attention?
Mindfulness is about bringing this open, non-judgmental awareness to the present moment.
Hmm.
So instead of getting caught up in your thoughts, worrying about the future or dwelling on the past, you're really bringing your attention to what's happening right now.
Okay. So like if I'm feeling anxious about a presentation that I have to give like tomorrow,
Right.
mindfulness would be about noticing those thoughts and feelings, but not getting carried away by them.
Exactly. Yeah, you acknowledge the anxiety, but you're also noticing your breath, the sensations in your body, the sounds around you.
Yeah.
It's about expanding your awareness beyond just the confines of your thoughts.
So it seems like mindfulness and labeling kind of work together to create that sense of space around our thoughts and feelings so we can observe them without being like totally consumed by them.
Yeah, you got it. And the more you practice these techniques, the more that spaciousness becomes just a natural part of how you experience things.
Right.
You start to approach those challenges from a place of more calm and clarity.
Wow. It seems like that shift in perspective, being able to not get swept away by every little emotion, that's such a huge impact on your well-being.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are some of the benefits then of cultivating non-reactivity? Like what does this text say about that?
Well, one of the most immediate benefits is just a decrease in unnecessary suffering.
Oh yeah.
Think about how much of our daily stress comes from just overreacting to situations or getting caught up in those negative thought loops.
Oh, absolutely. I'm the queen of like worrying about things that never even happen.
Right, exactly. And with non reactivity, you learn to recognize those patterns and then you can choose not to engage with them. It doesn't mean you won't experience difficult emotions,
Right.
but you'll have the tools to kind of navigate them more skillfully.
So it's like learning to ride the waves instead of getting pulled under by every single current.
Exactly. And as you become more adept at navigating your inner world, you start to experience a greater sense of inner peace.
Inner peace.
Mm,
Now that's something I think we could all use a little more of these days.
I agree.
And I think we're going to explore those benefits of non-reactivity even more when we come back after the break. Welcome back. We've been exploring this idea of non-reactivity and using that river metaphor to understand how our thoughts and emotions are like flowing water, always changing.
Mm.
And then that true self is like the steady riverbed underneath.
Right.
And we also touched on some practical techniques like labeling and mindfulness.
Hmm.
But I want to know, like, what's the impact of all of this? How does cultivating non-reactivity actually change our lives?
Well, I mean, the benefits are profound. And one of the most significant that this text talks about is the cultivation of inner peace.
Inner peace. I mean, I feel like we all long for that in a way, like just that sense of stillness in the middle of all the chaos of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how does non-reactivity actually get us there?
Well, I think if you think back to that river analogy, when we're constantly reacting to every thought and every feeling, it's like we're a little leaf being tossed around on the surface of the water.
Right? Yeah.
But when we practice non-reactivity, we become more like that riverbed,
Uh-huh.
stable and unmoved, even when all that water is swirling around us.
So instead of being at the mercy of, whatever I'm feeling in the moment, I develop this sense of groundedness, like I'm centered within myself.
Exactly. And from that place of centeredness, inner peace kind of naturally arises. It's not about eliminating challenges or difficult emotions,
Right.
but it's about changing how we relate to them.
Okay, so it sounds like this shift in perspective also impacts how we interact with like the world around us.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Non-reactivity allows us to approach challenges with a lot more clarity and equanimity.
Equanimity, I like that word.
Yeah, so instead of, reacting impulsively or defensively,
Yeah.
we can respond with more wisdom and compassion.
So, like for example, if a coworker gives me some really harsh feedback, instead of immediately getting defensive, I might be able to take a step back, acknowledge, okay, this is how I'm feeling right now,
Right.
and then choose a more constructive way to respond.
Exactly. You're not suppressing the emotion, but you're also not letting it control you.
Okay.
You're creating space for a more skillful response.
I like that. I like that it's like we're expanding our range of choices
Yeah.
in how we respond to whatever life throws our way.
And that increased sense of agency, I think, can be really empowering.
Right. Like you're not just a victim of your circumstances.
Exactly. Yeah, it allows you to live more in alignment with your values.
This has been so insightful.
Yeah.
I think it's clear that non-reactivity, it's not just an idea, it's a practice
Yeah.
that can really transform our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And the beauty of it is that it's available to anyone you know. It doesn't matter what your background is or what you believe.
It's really just about paying attention.
It just requires that willingness to pay attention to our inner world and cultivate a different way of relating to our thoughts and emotions.
And on that note, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up today's deep dive. So
Mhm.
as you go about your day, maybe consider this. Where in your life could you benefit from a little more non-reactivity? What situation or relationship could be transformed by, bringing that greater sense of awareness and spaciousness to your experience? Thanks for joining us and keep diving deep.